Okay, good morning. I'm joined by Nassau County Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder, Assistant Special Agent in charge of the DEA Brian Iula, Detective Michael Wall, and Sergeant Thomas Walker of NCPD's Asset Forfeiture Bureau, members of the DEA's Long Island District Office Tactical Diversion Squad, and from my office, ADA's Melissa Scannell and Stephanie Palma. We're here this morning to announce the indictment for depraved indifference murder against Dr. George Blatti for his role in the deaths of 5 patients who were entrusted in his care. Additionally, there are charges of reckless endangerment for 6 more patients and the role that Dr. Blatti played in their care. This defendant was previously indicted in 2019 following a lengthy and thorough investigation into the reckless and illegal prescribing practices that he engaged in. But what we have learned in the months subsequent is truly shocking to the conscience. This physician, who swore an oath to do no harm, allegedly ignored relentless warnings regarding the dangers posed by his prescribing practices. Our investigation found that he had received stacks of letters from insurance companies warning about his overprescribing of opioids. Relatives of his patients called him, demanding him to stop prescribing opioids to their loved ones. Pharmacies warned him. The State Office of Professional Medical Conduct investigated and interviewed this defendant. And most importantly and tragically, at least 3 of his patients asked him to stop prescribing opioids to themselves and sought help for their addictions. Despite this drumbeat of warnings and desperate pleas, despite his training and many years of experience, despite unmistakable signs that the patients that he were seeing were in the throes of addiction that was debilitating, we allege that this defendant cravenly continued to prescribe shockingly reckless and foreseeably lethal doses of dangerous painkillers, all the while billing insurance and collecting cash. We allege that each death attributed to this physician can be directly traced to prescriptions he wrote with unconscionable and reckless disregard for their lives. The grand jury knew that Dr. Blatti knew that several of his patients had died at ages far too young to die of natural causes. We allege that he knew what he was prescribing, and he knew the associated risks of those prescriptions. And in some cases, he inquired of the medical examiner and of the patient's families about the cause of death. Nonetheless, we allege that he continued to prescribe massive and staggering quantities of dangerous and addictive medications in combinations that any doctor would know would put their patients at extreme risk of death. These prescriptions frequently served no legitimate medical purpose, and sometimes he issued them recklessly while seated in his car, with no examination done of this patient's conditions. If his drug-addicted patients asked for more drugs, he simply wrote the scripts. And sometimes they even asked him to stop. These were not the actions of a good doctor who was just trying to please his patients, or a genteel, old-time practitioner who simply fell behind modern practice. We charge that these defendants' actions were extreme and depraved, that he arrogantly and callously disregarded incessant warnings about his dangerous actions, and that his prescription pad was as lethal as any murder weapon. To date, he has expressed no contrition for his patients' deaths, In fact, following his arrest last year, he allegedly told a detective, "I'm smarter than you. I'm the doctor. I know what I'm doing. I don't tell you how to be a detective. You don't tell me how to be a doctor." The indictment and our release detail the horrific stories of 5 victims who sought care from Dr. Blatti. Each suffered from serious addiction and other medical ailments. And in every case, we allege he did little or no follow-up testing. When he knew of overdoses or conditions that elevated a patient's risk of fatal outcomes, we charge that he drastically departed from the standard of care required of a physician. In one case, he allegedly prescribed the victim 9 times the daily maximum recommended dosage of opioids. 9 times. Instead of complying with the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm, we allege it was Dr. Blatti's depraved indifference to human life that was a direct cause of these people's deaths. I'm unendingly grateful to the victims' families for their courage and their cooperation, which was invaluable to this investigation, and my heart goes out to them for their heartbreaking losses. These victims, Geraldine Sabatasso, Michael Kinzer, Robert Milanes, Sean Quigley, and Diane Woodrig, were mothers and fathers, daughters and sons, sisters and brothers, beloved family members who deserved quality care and deserved help in overcoming their addictions. Instead, they received a death sentence from a drug pusher who was masquerading as a physician. I'm also grateful to the witnesses who have come forward and assisted in our investigation, several of whom are battling their own addictions. They too are victims of Dr. Blatti's criminal conduct, and I pray for their success in recovery. This case also highlights the need for a review of the way doctors who overprescribe dangerous drugs are overseen and monitored. In 2012, the legislature took strong action to address the opioid crisis by requiring electronic prescription usage statewide, with few exceptions. But our investigation found that Dr. Blatti allegedly exploited these exceptions, applying for and receiving a waiver from the state health commissioner that allowed him to continue prescribing on less secure paper scripts that hampered oversight. Despite a review in 2017 by the Office of Professional Medical Conduct, Dr. Blatti faced no discipline, and he continued to overprescribe with tragic consequences. I have been a prosecutor for nearly 30 years, and I have never seen a case in which a physician has acted with such incredible and reckless disregard for human life. This is an unprecedented case, but these victims and their families deserve justice. And our prosecutors and the people who are standing behind me are committed to doing everything we can to prevent this kind of horrific tragedy from claiming the lives of more New Yorkers. I'd like to thank Commissioner Ryder, Detective Michael Wall, Sergeant Thomas Walker, and the rest of the Nassau County Police for their outstanding work and commitment to this investigation. I'd also like to thank Ray Donovan from the DEA and Assistant Special Agent in Charge Brian Ayula and the DEA Long Island Division Tactical Squad for their invaluable contributions to this important case. At this time, I'd like to ask Commissioner Ryder to say a few words.
Good morning. First of all, it's no longer Dr. Blatti, it's Defendant Blatti. He's going to go and serve the rest of his remaining of his life in jail, where he belongs, for what he did to those victims. This is a 3.5-year investigation. I want to compliment the DA, our DA, for having the courage to do what not enough people are doing in this country. Charge him properly. Charge him with what he deserves to be charged with, depraved indifference murder. I also want to thank the DA for allowing my detectives to continue to run with this investigation, working hand in hand with the assistant district attorneys. The message is clear. We said it in Operation Natalie. We'll say it again, and you heard the DA just say it. I don't care what you look like. I don't care if you're on the corner with a hoodie on, you dress with a suit on, you dress like a pharmacist or a doctor. We will spend the time and the effort to come after you and hunt you down. We owe it to our victims to give them a voice. And that's what's been done here today. So again, I want to thank the DA and compliment both the work of the district attorneys, DAs, and of course my detectives who've done a great job on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now I'd ask Brian Ayula to say a few words from the DEA.
Good morning. District Attorney Singas, Police Commissioner Ryder. Today is a proud day for the DEA and for our counterparts as we have held this defendant accountable for the loss of life. We are incredibly proud to have collaborated with our dedicated law enforcement partners of the Nassau County Police Department's Asset Forfeiture and Intelligence Unit and the Nassau County DA's office in this investigation. This press conference is a demonstration of our long-standing partnership and how we've continued to battle against the opioid epidemic even as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to plague us. The charges set forth in the indictment sends the message that if you've committed a heinous crime, you will be punished to the fullest extent of the law, no matter what degree you have earned, no matter what title you have garnered. You will be prosecuted. Thank you, DA Singas, and your assistants for your hard work. Not only were the defendant's prescribing habits alarming in volume, they were extremely dangerous in combinations that were prescribed. This is a basic knowledge for anyone who holds a DEA registration, a pharmacist, a mid-level practitioner, or an MD. They have to understand how these drugs react to one another. This defendant knew better and made the choice to throw out his better judgment, education, and training. Opioid abuse continues to be a serious public threat to this great nation, and we will continue to work diligently with our partners and use the available resources to eliminate the diversion of prescription medication and counterfeit pills. We know all too well the abuse of diverted prescription painkillers can lead users to seek alternatives, such as counterfeit pills laced with fentanyl, which poses an additional threat these days. The CDC says that over a year's time frame, New York overdose deaths have risen more than 21%. These are trying times. Now, more than ever, we as a nation are placing our trust in our medical professionals. Now, more than ever, rogue registrants will be held accountable. These innovative charges reflect that accountability. This defendant in particular has shown that when faced with the Hippocratic Oath, he decided not only to disregard it, he decided to use it to wipe his backside. Again, I'd like to thank our partners in the Nassau County District Attorney's Office, Nassau County Police Department's Asset Forfeiture and Intelligence Unit, and the DEA's Long Island Tactical Diversion Squad. The DEA Long Island office is comprised of special agents from the Drug Enforcement Administration, United States Department of Health and Human Services, OIG, and detectives from the following departments: Nassau County Police Department, Rockville Center Police Department, Suffolk County Police Department, and the Port Washington Police Department. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We'll take a few questions. Yeah, these are, I mean, there are thousands and thousands of pills that were prescribed. We lay it out in the release and in the indictment, but this was a staggering amount of opioids that was being prescribed over a short period of time. And, you know, what's particularly dangerous is the dosage and then the combination of different drugs that he was prescribing. So again, this was a staggering amount. These people really had no chance against that. You know, the amount of drugs in their systems, the amount of drugs that they were then requiring, no amount of willpower could overcome that. And instead of helping his patients, instead of referring his patients, instead of calling up rehab centers and getting the assistance that these people so desperately needed, you know, we're alleging he basically doubled down and gave them more opioids.
Was there any attempt along the way to, did anyone who complained, detectives or anybody attempt to get his license withdrawn?
Well, you know, we know that the Office of Professional Medical Conduct was looking at him and investigating him. And after our indictment in 2019, his license was being examined. But again, I don't know if anyone made specific requests to have it taken away from him. You know, again, we're looking into it. He was seeing a lot of patients. These are particularly hard cases to make because you have to show a clear path between his prescription and a person's death, and that's not always easy. It might be a contributing factor. In these cases, we were able to directly bridge the death with his prescription practices. But again, you know, we are talking to people. You know, it's important to note we're in the middle of an opioid crisis, and just when we thought we were making some headway, along came COVID, and along came people feeling isolated and alone and desperate and stuck in their homes, and we find that ODs are heading upwards, you know, much to our chagrin. So again, taking advantage of that is extremely despicable, in my opinion. And instead of doing what his oath required him to do, which is to heal, to help, instead he basically caused the death of these people. So yeah, we're investigating. We're continuing to investigate. We ask anyone in the public who fears that this is going on with Dr. Blatti or with any other doctor to contact us and to contact the police.
What do you think motivated him? Is it just money?
Yeah, you know, that's hard to say. I would be speculating. I don't know. He was charging, you know, he was charging and billing through insurance. So that could be part of it. But actually, I couldn't answer that because I don't know.
Mr. Attorney, can you talk a little bit about the decision to charge him with murder? Since you believe this is the first in New York State, has it been done elsewhere? What's been announced? Talk a little bit about the process.
Yeah, I mean, the depraved indifference. So when you act with depraved indifference, you can charge murder as opposed to a manslaughter charge. And it basically elevates someone's action to the same as if you took out a gun and pointed it at someone and shot them point blank and killed them. But they're very difficult charges to prove, to show that wanton disregard for human life, to show that you basically don't even care if a person lives or dies, that you're going to continue down this pathway. The Court of Appeals has made it difficult, and the appellate courts, for us to charge depraved indifference, and it's just very unique circumstances which rise to that level, that callous disregard for someone's life, the actions that are just completely wanton and end up causing someone's death. And we felt in this case that his actions, the amount of drugs that he was prescribing, the number of deaths, 5 deaths, basically he's a serial killer in our opinion. So these specific facts fit with the law as we saw it. We did extensive research into the law, and I'm confident that we will prevail on these charges in this case.
Can you talk about the victims for a moment? You said, Mr. Attorney, that they died before, you know, younger than they would with a natural death. What are their ages? Can you tell us about them?
Yeah, you know, I mean, they're our neighbors, they're our family members, they're our loved ones. They were, for the most part, in their 30s and 40s, struggling with their own personal demons and looking for help. And instead of getting help, they basically got a death sentence.
So was the word on the street, people knew that he would write prescriptions?
Yeah, there was a little bit of that. People knew when people are looking for drugs, they know which doctors are going to give them out more readily than others. So he was definitely known in those circles for being easy and giving out his prescriptions. Again, you know, a lot of this is very disturbing. He was handing out prescriptions in his car. So people were not getting tested. Sometimes he did tests, blood tests, urine tests. Sometimes he did not. Sometimes they would ask for drugs for a family member. And without checking, without ever examining another person, he would write scripts for that other family member. So again, it's this complete depravity in which he issued those prescriptions that you know, he will be held to account. So thank you all very much. Nice to see you all.